We are back. We are back. Reverend CJ Brinson here with you, Faith-Based Engagement Director with NC Black Alliance. We are ready to begin our next session. Thank you all of you who have waited patiently and are working with us so patiently as we are working out the kinks. But we ensure to you that we have an amazing seminar planned for you. And we also have an amazing session that is coming up for you right now at the 11 o'clock hour. We are 2 minutes ahead of schedule. And so that's a good thing. And so we want to start early. We don't want you all to just be waiting and aimlessly for us to come on. And so right now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. We are about to enter into our session on what Black faith leaders need to know about redistricting. This is something that is an issue that is growing exponentially as we are approaching the political landscape of the future. And Black faith leaders within local faith spaces need to know about this, and they need to know about it now. And so we have a dear colleague and friend who is here with us, our special projects coordinator, Brother Reggie Weaver, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself in his own way. Brother Weaver, you have the floor.
All right, thank you all. Good to be with you all today, and I'm glad to see all the participants who are on. I was also kind of watching the Facebook Live feed a little bit earlier, so just glad to see all the engagement that's happening throughout the day. So again, my name is Reggie Weaver. I'm the Special Programs Coordinator. Cat CJ's presentation. So I know CJ mentioned that when I came on board last year, part of my work to help him to develop the faith-based program. So even though I'm not directly working with that program, it's still near and dear to my heart. So I'm glad to see the work that is continuing. So my understanding of the assignment, as CJ already said, was for me to use some basics on what Black faith leaders are about. This is an all-day seminar, and so I know that we've got a session. This session, usually when I would lead a workshop or training like this, it would be a little bit longer, be a little bit more streamlined this time. So what that is, and some of the people are on the call. I know we have some elected officials. I know we have some people who've been districting work for a while. This is not going to be a call where we're in the weeds, like, what policies are out there, all the kind of minutiae of redistricting. This is going to be a time where first thing I'll do is just kind of give some basics about what redistricting is and why it matters. Talk about some of the work that we as the Alliance have been doing to try to help educate the communities around redistricting in preparation for the upcoming redistricting cycles. And then kind of gives just some concrete implications for the redistricting process this year to local elections, as well as faith community can engage. So there will, and I will point to this throughout the presentation, you want to go more in depth. We have a specific website where you can go and find resources that'll go into all of the detail, as well as an ask for whether or not you would like to receive some further training at the local level. So with that, I'll go ahead and start my presentation and we'll get started. So just to start, I know a lot of people who are on this call, maybe even watching it, maybe been doing this work for a while, but I never want to assume where people are. So just to start with kind of what redistricting even is, as the name kind of suggests, it's a process of redrawing our district maps, the boundaries that are used to determine who represents us. Constitutionally, that focus is primarily at the House of Representatives level, but pretty much any elected body that operates on a district capacity, redistricting has to happen. It has to happen at least every 10 years. And I say that because, as we know, especially here in North Carolina, quite often the maps that are drawn are challenged in court. And so there have to be a process of redrawing those maps even more frequently. But by Constitution, it has to happen every 10 years following the census. And the purpose for that is the census data gives us more of a sense of population shifts, where populations have grown, where people have moved. And so this is a way of kind of keeping up with those patterns. Redistricting has implications, as I already mentioned, for population count. It also determines the size of the voting districts. So again, as populations change, one of the requirements of districts is that they have to be the same, roughly the same size. And so that roughly the same number of people within the district. So that some ways it's going to change the boundaries and the size of the individual maps. It also helps in determining allocations for federal funding. Has implications as well for community planning, where roads and schools and hospitals, et cetera, will be built, as well as economic development. So redistricting with all of that is necessary. So there's nothing inherently wrong or flawed about redistricting itself. It does, however, have this kind of evil twin that I'm sure by now, especially in North Carolina, we all have been hearing about. If you hadn't known about it before the past 10 years, you've heard a lot about it over the past few years. And that's a type of redistricting that is called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is also a practice of redrawing district boundaries, but with a specific purpose of favoring a political interest within the legislative body. And so this often results in districts with kind of convoluted or kind of strange boundaries and not compact looking districts. And so just a little bit of a history of that. Gerrymandering, the practice has been around for a long time. This is nothing new. It's been around since at least 1812. It was named after Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, who helped his party essentially to maneuver the district maps there. In order for his party to win. And so the name comes from a combination of his name, Gary, and the fact that a political satirist thought that the district they came up with looked like a salamander. So it's a combination of Jerry and salamander. And so there are two kind of primary techniques that are used in gerrymandering. The first is what's called cracking. And so that's a process of spreading voters across multiple districts. And what it does, it dilutes their power in those individual districts where they're spread. And so an example that I'm sure is well known by now is the example of North Carolina A&T State University. Now this particular congressional map has been corrected. This is no longer what the map looks like. But in 2016, after a previous court challenge, when when the legislature was correcting the map, one of the ways they corrected that, quote unquote, was to divide the campus of North Carolina A&T. So A&T obviously is one single campus. There would be no reason for the campus itself to be divided. A&T is also situated within one city, Greensboro, North Carolina. So not only did this map divide the campus and therefore the voting power of the students, it divided the whole city of Greensboro, as well as the Black community of Greensboro, because the campus of A&T sits in the heart of Black Greensboro. So the impact was beyond even just the campus. But if you think about what that means for the residents of Greensboro and particularly the Black community of Greensboro, it's in those specific districts, District 13 and District 6, I live in Greensboro, and our voting power was essentially diluted for quite a while. As a result of that, these two districts, North Carolina A&T, or the North Carolina Black Alliance, we are nonpartisan, but the reality was that this resulted in representation by two Republicans in those districts. The other technique is packing. And so in some ways that's the reverse. It is packing as many people of a single party or single type or single demographic into one or a few districts as possible. It always ensures that they are likely gonna be able to elect a candidate of their choice. So if you draw a majority Democrat district, there's a very good chance you're gonna elect a Democrat in that party. If you draw a majority Black district, very good chance you're gonna be able to elect a Black person in that district. But what it does is minimize the number of elections you can influence over the whole map. And so An example of that again, prior to the 2016 mandatory redraw, you've got this example of District 12, which packed Black voters stretching from Greensboro all the way down to Charlotte. And so again, it assured the election of a Black official, but reduced the overall representation of Black voters at the congressional level as well. So those are some basics. There's a whole lot more that you can go into, but just want to kind of give some grounding for what redistricting is and how it has been used to harm specifically Black voters. And so, especially in light of kind of the news that we've had over the past few years in North Carolina, in light of just our kind of growing awareness of the impact of this process, one of the efforts that we as the Alliance have been doing over the past few months is to lead a series of community trainings. It was all online, just kind of helping people to understand the importance of being involved in the process, gerrymandering or redistricting, and whether it's redistricting that's done in a fair way or gerrymandering, just the redistricting process impacts our ability to build political power and to advance the issues that impact us on a daily basis. And so what we've been trying to do over the past few months, and this work is continuing, is to offer training and resources for the community to understand the process and also to be able to become more effective monitors of the process. We held a series of 5 trainings in May and June. We did this in partnership with North Carolina Counts Coalition, as well as North Carolina Asian Americans Together. Over those 5 trainings, we had about 750 people to register across 37 counties. And we had the highest concentration, as you might expect, in some of the more urban areas. But very successful trainings and covered a variety of topics. So one, I've already made the connection to I think the census and the fact that in some ways we have this redistricting process because of the census. So first session was really just kind of grounding what the implications of the 2020 census is going to be for us in 2021 in redistricting. Also kind of went more in depth in the second session around gerrymandering and what that is, what the history has been here in North Carolina, and describing some ways that local communities have resisted those efforts, or the way local communities have shaped fair redistricting processes where they are. We also talked about the intersections of redistricting. So again, that reference I made to the fact that redistricting impacts our ability to advance various policy concerns. So we talked about the way looking specifically at one local community here in the state around the way the redistricting process has impacted them. And then redistricting in practice. So that's a session where we literally had someone walk us through one of the mapping tools that are available so that people in community can begin to kind of practice that themselves, so that when communities are in those rooms or on those calls with elected officials trying to give comment on the maps, that they've actually had some practice and are able to give comment more effectively. And then we created as well a kind of a special session that actually wasn't planned initially, but we thought it was important to hear from some elders who've been doing this work. And so here in the state of North Carolina, we have Attorney Angus Thompson, who has been instrumental in his career in helping to spearhead some fair redistricting efforts in Robeson County, as well as Commissioner Leroy Johnson in Mississippi, who has led some work with an organization called Southern Echo to ensure equitable redistricting processes there. So we had a time where they're kind of talking to each other, just kind of sharing their stories, so that we can glean some of the wisdom from the work that they've been doing. All of those sessions and the resources are available. All of those were recorded, so you can go and find the videos right there on the website. You can see the web address. I have it in the body of the slide, but it's also at the bottom of every slide here. So ncblackalliance.org/code-red. If you have a smartphone and you're watching right now, you can point your camera at that QR code as well, and it'll take you right to it. So in terms of some things that we need to know here in North Carolina, and some implications for the census data and how it's going to impact redistricting. So typically at this point in the year, on a good year, we will have already had all of the census data released. Given a number of things related to 2020, one being COVID-19, but also, as we know, sporadic support from the previous presidential administration around the efforts to get out the count. The census data in its fullness has been delayed. What we do have now, though, which was released on April 26th, is the data that is used to determine what the congressional representation is going to be. So currently, North Carolina has 13 congressional districts. We know as of April 26th that we have grown enough to add an additional seat. What's unknown from that, and this is part of the data that we're still awaiting, we know we're going to get an additional seat. We don't know where exactly in the state this additional congressional district is going to be drawn. But when we receive that fuller data, we'll get a sense exactly kind of where the most growth has happened, and that'll shape where this district will go. The full redistricting data will be released in a matter of weeks by August 16th. Some have said maybe even by August 13th, but certainly by August 16th, we'll get the full file. That'll give, as I just referenced, a clear sense of where that 14th congressional district will go. It'll also give counties and municipalities clarity on local population growth in preparation for local redistricting. And so that's going to be another concern for us in the next few months. You've already been hearing, I'm sure, many of us live in districts currently that have been planning to have elections in 2021. But the delay in the redistricting data is now kind of complicating that. And so one thing that we also are having to watch out for, recently the state Senate passed Senate Bill 7/2022. And so what that does, it allows, it doesn't require, but it allows for a delay in districted elections at the local level due to delay in census data. It still allows that elections that have at-large positions may still be held, even if other seats are districted. So if you have a city council, for instance, that has a combination of districts and at-large seats, municipalities could opt to still hold those at-large elections and wait until 2022 to hold the district elections, the elections for the districted seats. What it's also going to mean is that governments who choose to postpone elections, they're going to have a very limited, short window of time to redraw the election districts. On the one hand, that's good news in the sense that even though it's a small window of time, what it means is that by delaying the elections, it gives communities more time to make comment on the district maps. But if there's not input, if there's not mobilization to make sure that our voices are heard on that, this could lead to unfair districts, and in particular, the dilution of Black votes. And so, here's some things that you can do. Right now, I think this list may even still be growing, but we as the Alliance on the Code Red website within the next few days, we'll be adding a section to the Code Red site focused on municipal elections. So we want to make that kind of a one-stop shop where you're both getting the resources around redistricting, but also more in-depth information about the implications for local elections. But in the meantime, if you'd like to see which localities or if your county or city in particular has decided to delay elections, you can go to the State Board of Elections website to find that information right now. We're also going to include, we're figuring out a way to kind of how best represent that on our website, but right now you can go there and find that out. So we encourage you to do that. It's going to be critical as well to get as many people in the local community to participate in the monitoring efforts at the local level. As I said, from the trainings that we've already done, you can find resources to assist you there. We're also looking to schedule a second round of county-specific trainings. So the trainings that we've done were statewide. They're going to be valuable for local communities, But I think we also recognize that specific counties and communities in specific cities are going to want to know exactly how to more effectively advocate for issues around that are very specific to where they live. And so right now we are in the process of prioritizing what our counties are going to be as an organization. But if you think that's something you would be interested in, my contact information will follow at the end of this. We definitely want to be in conversation with you to see what support we can offer. And then just educate communities on the ways that the redistricting process impacts the issues that affect them on a daily basis. So again, I caught part of CJ's earlier presentation, just noting the importance of faith leaders and faith communities really becoming educated. I know that even in the toolkit that was created last year, we've got some resources to help you do that. We're also in a process with Code Red of compiling the kind of best lessons and best practices from the trainings that we've led into a single toolkit as well. But it's important that you educate your communities on this process and why it matters to them. So my contact information is here, Reggie at NorthCarolinaBlackAlliance.org. I'm sure following this seminar, anybody who registered at least will also be receiving a follow-up with any resources that are available. But feel free to contact with any questions, or especially if you think that you may be interested in helping to facilitate a more localized training. We want to be in conversation with you about that.
Just want to say thank you, Brother Weaver, for that timely presentation. So much in there to grasp. One of the questions would have been, why is this important for Black faith leaders? But you already, I think, touched on that and you hit on that in the presentation. And I'm just so blessed to be able to have you.
CJ, yeah, and I did touch on it, but I think in that presentation I didn't go as in depth, but and maybe people have specific questions, but I even just think about as it relates to the Black faith community in particular. Yeah. So the movement for Black liberation hasn't just been about voting rights. We know that historically, but that's been a big part of it. And we also know that as it relates to voting rights, a lot of that work was led and supported by faith communities. So there's just kind of a history of involvement already. And so I think there's kind of a continuation of that tradition. And especially when you think about gerrymandering in particular, it is a form of voter suppression. So I just think that to me, there's just a natural connection between that history of faith communities being involved in the voting rights struggle in particular, and continuing to support the work that and have won and protect that for future generations. We're still dealing with COVID, and we're seeing increasing numbers, and I know that faith communities in particular have been impacted and have been dealing with that for the past year. And one of the things that has been difficult for faith communities, it's been in part the response of respective state governments to it. So, some state governments, some required shutdown, some didn't. And so there's just been kind of the response from elected officials at every level really has just been kind of uneven. And so faith communities in some ways, among other organizations, have kind of had to adapt and bear the brunt of that. And so that impact or that response is impacted by who is in office as well. And so to the extent that we're still dealing with this, we need to have elected officials who are going to have the health and safety of the public at heart. And so because faith communities are really kind of dealing with that on a daily basis, I think that's, is critical as well. Related to that has been the economic impact on citizens, especially during COVID. And faith communities often have been at least one of the organizations who have had to kind of help people in those difficult times. And again, all of it is impacted by who's in office. And so paying attention to the redistricting process matters because that shapes, it gives us a better, if the process is done fairly, it gives us a better chance of being able to elect people to office who are going to have our best interests at heart.
like that you raised that, particularly the piece around the economic piece. If our communities are impacted in a negatively, in a negative way, I'm sorry, in a negative way, that has an impact on our parishioners.
Right.
That has an impact on our worship spaces. That has an impact on our outreach and what it is that we are able to do. I also love that you have made that connection in how faith leaders have always been a part of uh, the movements for justice within our community. And it hasn't just been centered around, it hasn't just been centered around uh, getting people out to vote, but it has also been centered around uh, things such as voter suppression, as what we are seeing happening with the way redistricting is unfolding within our communities. And this is very important because it's going to impact who it is that we can have to represent us, in office. And we do a lot of complaining about those who may already be there, but to have someone there who is in staunch opposition to what it is that you believe politically, to be in staunch opposition to what it is that your community needs. As the people in Greensboro found out that had that district split, that can be damning to the futures of Black people and our children in the community, our parishioners and congregants. So once again, I want to thank you for uplifting some of those things.